Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Matthew Barber. I'm Police and Crime Commissioner for Thames Valley. 99% of young people don't carry knives. Thames Valley is an incredibly safe part of the country. Violent crime here is one of the lowest per head of population of any part of the country. But that is very little consolation to the parents of Olly Stephens, who we're going to hear from a bit more later, and the parents of all those other young people who have been killed or had their lives changed as a result of knife crime. And I'm always very conscious that this is a subject that I talk about a huge deal, and there is a danger of creating even more concern about it by doing so. But I think it's important because of the impact that it can have. The issue that we're faced with is very much a culture of knife carrying, which I'll refer to again later, because a lot of the issues of conflict between young people in particular aren't new. They've been the same for the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 300, 500 years. There is nothing new in many of the issues that we see. What is different is the culture that makes it acceptable for some people to carry a weapon. And many of the really tragic incidents we've seen would not have ended up the way they had if it weren't for the knives themselves, which is why I focus so much on the offence of possession of a knife rather than waiting until other offences have been committed. That's why it's so important. So we do need to bust some of those myths with young people, I think, about the number of people who carry weapons, because obviously one of the reasons that people will cite is for fear. And actually exposing the fact that relatively few people will ever carry a knife and the risk is relatively low is an important part of that conversation. I often think in a sweeping generalisation there are probably around 3 cohorts of young people who carry knives. You've got at one end the really serious, frankly hardened criminal, even at potentially a young age, who needs to be dealt with through the criminal justice system because they are going to cause themselves and others a great deal of harm. And at the other end you've probably got your stupid and probably terrified 13-year-old who's made some awful mistake and then suddenly been caught out by the police or by a teacher and will never do it again for fear of embarrassment. And then you've got a cohort in the middle, and they are the ones who concern me most because they aren't necessarily bad kids. They aren't on a life of hardened crime yet, but they could be. They are the ones that we can save. They are the ones who can be protected by interventions from parents, from teachers, from the police, from all of us in society. And that is where I think we can have a real impact. So we all have that responsibility. I'm really keen in how we engage with parents, as I've said. It's the third bit of Operation Deter. You'll hear a bit about the operational approach to Operation Deter, but it's something very close to my heart, and I want to explain the thinking behind Operation Deter and how we ended up in the place we are. It will have been about 18 months ago here in Milton Keynes. We had a well-known individual. I won't go into too much detail because there's still some proceedings around it, but a well-known individual who was being well policed, frankly. He was being stopped regularly. He was being lawfully harassed. He was one of those in that first cohort of the hardened criminals that I was talking about. And the police were making every effort to try and deal with him. And he was arrested on a Wednesday. He had a knife on him. He was released under investigation. Everybody made the correct decisions as per all the processes that were in place. I think that would be the same in pretty much any police force anywhere in the country. And a few days later, he's murdered someone. And I think if you're a member of the public, that is a hugely challenging situation, that you see the police have literally got hands on someone and yet weren't able to do what most of the public would felt should be done. And that's just a bit about changing some of the processes within policing. So now it is much more likely, as you'll hear later, that you will be, if you're caught with a knife, you are much more likely to be charged and remanded and taken in front of the courts. And I think that is what the public would expect policing to be doing. But frankly, that's not what was happening here 18 months ago. And it's not what was happening across the rest of the country. I think in many places still isn't happening. So the police absolutely need to be robust in using the powers that they have, those unique powers of coercion and force that no other agency has. But we can't fix these challenges by punishment alone. The process, if you like, around the strategy around Operation Deter is to stop people who are carrying knives, to prosecute those people who are carrying knives, but then it's to offer that support to prevent them doing so in the first place. It's about breaking the cycle. And that's where many people in this room, I think, come in. It's how we work with schools and with parents to say, if you've got a concern about your child carrying a knife, it's human nature, I think, to want to try and tackle those problems yourselves. You don't want your child to get in trouble with the police. You don't want to grass on your own child. You think you can deal with those problems, but the reality is, for many people, that's a real struggle. And actually, if you reach out early on and get support from the school, from local authorities, from the police, that help can be there. And I think the message to parents needs to be, if you have concerns about your own child, reach out now, reach out early, and there is support in place to help you and to help them, and that can make the difference for their lives. Because if you leave it until they're stopped by the police, then it's probably too late, because we will take a robust approach to those who choose to carry knives.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Kelly, Acting Inspector within Thames Valley Police Criminal Justice Department. I'm the Force Operational Lead for delivering Operation Deter. Previously to this operation, if you were found in possession of a bladed article, most people would be home for tea time. What we've done now under Operation Deter is to change that to be robust. If you are caught in possession of a bladed article, expect to be remanded in Thames Valley Police custody until the next available court, and that will include Friday and Saturday nights, so you're staying there until the Monday morning, which does happen. So with the PCC, his office, and Thames Valley Police collaboratively, we launched Operation Deter on the 1st of July. Effectively, it is a zero-tolerance approach to those carrying and being found in possession of bladed articles. It's our custody sergeants within the Criminal Justice Department across all 6 custody suites in Thames Valley Police are being proactive to charge and remand those perpetrators to court. Where we have to bail, we will absolutely be robust with conditions where those conditions are met. But also, when we get these people to court, the criminal justice system and the court services are being robust with sentencing. Perpetrators are pleading guilty at the earliest opportunity, which allows that swift and firm delivery of justice. Also, for our younger under 18 cohort of people, which you'll hear from our youth offending teams, it also allows them to have that early intervention support, because what we do know, the earlier the intervention, the better the longer term of them from re-offending. We set out under Operation Deter a timeline to be a year's project to deliver the principles of Op Deter. As you can see here, our slide does represent where we launched in Milton Keynes, which was the local policing area and custody. We then moved through our timeline into August, where we moved into Aylesbury custody and the Aylesbury LPA. And then we've moved through into October, where Slough has a similar knife crime problem. And working with our Slough colleagues at the youth offending team, we launched Operation Deter in Slough and Maidenhead custody. We then progressed into January, which is where Operation Deter and the Act Now principles for under 18s has commenced with Milton Keynes youth offending team. And then that has then led on to Slough under 18s being implemented in March. Also in March, we went live in Oxford City and bringing our other custody suite to Abingdon. And then in May, just prior to June, our final suite, Banbury. So any persons across any of our 6 custody suites, wherever they are taken, those custody sergeants will start applying the principles and adopting the Op Deter. And then June, we have rolled out, or we are in the final stage now of rolling out to the rest of the force. There's 6 remaining LPAs, which we are currently delivering. What that means for all of our communities, wherever you are within Thames Valley Police, all police officers have been trained under the Op Deter guidance to deliver a swift and effective, robust stance in completing the investigations in a timely fashion to allow CPS to make a charging decision or our custody sergeants. This is a really important slide here. This is just dedicated on Milton Keynes. So in the first 6 months, so from July to December, what we've achieved in Milton Keynes, and this is simple possession arrests only. 70 arrests, 29 of those were charged and remanded, and then the additional 10 out of those that we arrested went straight to prison. So it's a huge increase of robustness from the police, Crown Prosecution Service, but also the judiciary of sentencing powers. I'd like to just share with you some of the positive results from it as well across our spectrum. So a 48-year-old person arrested in possession of a knife, but also was threatening behaviour. He received a 15-month custodial sentence. 19-year-old lad, possession of a Rambo knife. He pleaded guilty and went straight to prison for 40 weeks. And a 26-year-old man, also found in simple possession, he got a mandated drug rehabilitation order. First-time offender, but involved in drugs, which also we do know carries a significant amount of high harm to communities and the impact of them. So where are we across Thames Valley Police with Operation Deter and some of our arrests? So since the 1st of July through to the 31st of May, we've conducted 694 arrests. Out of those, 248 we have successfully charged and remanded within 24 hours of them being arrested. Of those, 93 people went straight to prison. We've had 36 other court outcomes, and there's a sort of that breakdown there: custodial sentences, fines, suspended sentences, conditional discharges, drug rehabilitation orders, and community orders. So what's next for Operation Deter? As I sort of showed you on that timeline, we are in the final stages of our rollout across the rest of the force. Come September, there will be an independent evaluation, which my colleagues at the PCC's office is in the process of orchestrating at the moment. The results are continuing to be monitored every single day as part of my job to monitor all those that come into custody and those that are disposed of, and working with each LPA. But as we deliver the final stage to our colleagues out on the LPAs, we've got to work out our plan to deliver this to business as usual. So Operation Deter will be here to stay within Thames Valley Police to reassure those communities that we will continue to be robust and remand with perpetrators who are in possession of knives.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Morgan. I'm a District Crown Prosecutor with the Thames and Chiltern Crown Prosecution Service, and I'm here to talk to you about the Crown Prosecution perspective and approach to Op Deter. Some statistics. Obviously, we've heard a lot about the prevalence of knife crime as an offence type within both in the Thames Valley area but across the country. This data from dating back to March 2022, 45,000 offences involving a knife or sharp instrument, so that's knives, bottles, etc. 261 homicides, of which we have some representation of that in our area. Sharp implements, knives, etc. being used in 40% of those offences, 237. 19,555 court disposals, cautions, convictions, etc. cases processed through the court. And very sadly, 18% of those offenders are juveniles, about 3,500 of them. Again, knife-enabled crime, so possession of a bladed article or offensive weapon used to threaten somebody, that carries us as a separate offence in its own right. There's also possession of threatening on educational premises, and also possession of offensive weapons and certain classes of weapons in private, which is a somewhat, not necessarily new development, but is a new, certainly in dealing with Op Deter, is actually a new step in relation to finding those who are habitual knife carriers, and when the searches are conducted of their homes, seizing weapons that fulfil the legal requirements from their homes and having them, they are subject to separate charges and can be destroyed. The Police and Crime Commissioner mentioned it, and my colleague Steve Kelly mentioned it about how we were years ago when, in fact, knife crime was fairly rare. I remember as a very junior prosecutor, people being sort of, you'd drop the case on a knife possession because they were so rare and really wasn't considered that seriously. That's 20 or so years ago. Now that has changed. The CPS approach, my prosecutor's approach, is that knife offences, people carrying knives, will be dealt with by the courts if they're adults, and the case fulfills the Code of Crown Prosecutors. The evidential test and the public interest test is met. You will go to court, and we will pursue that charge. And if you want to run a defence, we'll pursue the trial. So there's no sense of, oh, I've got two knives, I will prosecute you for one and let you off the other. No, if you have two knives, you face two charges. So a much more robust approach to that, much highlighting the fact that this is a real issue in our area and needs to be dealt with. Robust approach to prosecution of adults, as I've said, apply the Code for Crown Prosecutors, evidential test met pretty much universally. Public interest test for adults certainly met. These days, everyone knows position in relation to knives. Robust approach, charge, prosecution, into court, and usually, as has been pointed out, we're getting quite good results in relation to guilty pleas at first hearing. So defendants going before the court, they have no legal defence, pleading guilty and being dealt with. And these days, for adult offenders, even those with no previous convictions, there is a significant risk of custody. The case law says that even simple possession of someone who just has it in their pocket and is detected randomly could be 12 weeks in custody. And that's someone with no previous convictions who pleads guilty on the first occasion. Very robust approach, getting those cases in, getting those cases dealt with. So a slight difference on youth cases. Obviously, evidentially, I've said these cases are fairly straightforward. The evidential requirements are generally met under the full code test. The different consideration is for youths. So with adults, robust prosecution, get the cases into court, get the sentences imposed. For youths, we take a slightly broader look. We've got significant differences in their public interest considerations. The youth, young people, children, their ability to reason, their critical thinking is much less. We have to take that into consideration. And our code for Crown prosecutors makes us refer to that, look at their specific characteristics and their backgrounds when we consider that. And in fact, we're required to do that, because if we don't, then we can be judicially reviewed about our charging decision. So we have to look at the child holistically. We have to consider all the factors that may be affecting their offending when we make the decision to prosecute. Regardless of the circumstances of a child or young person coming before us for consideration of charge, we have to see a prosecution in the public interest in certain circumstances. The seriousness of the offence, the past record of the youth or the young person. If that person is a habitual knife carrier, the public interest will be in prosecution. And also where alternatives to prosecution have been tried and have been unsuccessful, that person will end up before the youth court, be dealt with through prosecution. Key aim of the Crown Prosecution Service in these cases is taking the timely decisions, bringing cases to a swift conclusion. We want the sentencing to be imposed without delay. We want the diversion to be imposed without delay. We want to get those who are involved in knife crime, be it their first offence and they can be diverted, or be they a habitual knife carrier for which custody is probably the only appropriate outcome. But we want those decisions taken as quickly as is appropriate, and sentences and decisions imposed on them without delay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jenna Palmer and I manage the out-of-court disposals, youth diversion and prevention at Milton Keynes Youth Justice and Support Service, formerly known as the Youth Offending Team, and Angela O'Flaherty, who's one of our senior youth officers who coordinates the Act Now project. Just to give you some context, so it's a voluntary project and it falls under our early support project, which is aimed at 10 to 18-year-olds who are resident in Milton Keynes. It does come under our voluntary aspect of the service, so we're very much about trying to work with young people at the earliest possible opportunity. In order to be able to deliver this project, we recruited 3 yacht officers, and we have 1 person who's in post for core hours, so through the working week, but we also have 2 out-of-hours workers, which means that we're able to provide a service to children and young people in Milton Keynes between the hours of 9 and 10 p.m, and that's 7 days a week. So we work at the weekends as well, and that's now become the new business as usual for us. We also recruited Angela, who's our senior yacht officer, and she coordinates Act Now and all elements that are associated with it. One of the key differences with Act Now in terms of how we're trying to work with these children and young people is that what we actually do is within 90 minutes of notification from the police that they are ready for us to attend because the child's in police custody, we go down and visit custody. We see the child, we introduce them to the project, and what we try and do is get some voluntary engagement with us pending a formal police outcome. So it's all about intervening at the earliest possible moment. And actually what we do know about when young people are arrested is given the impact of that arrest, it could be one of our reachable and teachable moments. So why are we different? Well, there's many kind of reasons really in terms of why this is different and a new approach to working with children and young people. I think one of the first things I wanted to point out is in terms of our branding. So what you'll notice is that you haven't seen Youth Justice and Support Service in terms of our logo, in terms of what we send out to young people, in terms of our communication and the narrative that we try and promote, not just with young people, children, but services that we work with as well. So we have neutral branding, and that's to try and reduce the stigmatisation and labelling of children. But what it's also to do is to try and reduce those barriers to engagement. So we basically make the service as accessible as we can to all children and young people that need it. In terms of visiting young people in police custody, so that is a new way of approaching young people, because ordinarily we may not have become known of those children until it was far later down the line when we're actually notified that they received an outcome. So it is a new way of working. It's very much about early intervention and trying to get in there as early as we can. Something else I wanted to touch on here in terms of why we're different, and this is not just Act Now, this is actually the Early Support Project, Milton Keynes, kind of full stop. We offer a speech, language and communication needs assessment to every child that comes through our doors. And Angela's going to touch on some statistics around that a little bit later. But that's crucially important to us, given the overrepresentation of SLCM and children and young people who are offend.
So we follow the same process that Milton Keynes do in terms of the 90 minutes and the 48-hour home visit. So overall, we've been running at now since March 2023. I don't know why it says March 2024, sorry. Overall, we've had 10 young people that meet the threshold of Opta Deter, and out of these, we've received 4 calls from Thames Valley Police within the 90 minutes. So we completed all of them, and young people were seen at Maidenhead Custody Suite. The 6 remaining young people that we didn't necessarily get the calls out, we were informed of within 48 hours. So out of them young people, we were able to complete 5 of the 48-hour home visits. One of the young people did refuse, so we didn't visit them. So overall, out of all 10 young people that meet the threshold, we continue to support 6 young people, so that is with our 12-week intervention programme.
We work closely with our partners, which include schools, SEND team, social care, CAMS, community services, mosques, Slough Borough Council, such as housing, adult social care. These are some of many. The approach is a child-first approach, with all professionals coming together to promote change, with an ethos of prevent, promote, and provide. Operation Deter staff will attend strategy meetings, CP case conferences, contextual safeguarding meetings, youth justice risk panel meetings, some of many examples to inform the partnership approach. We share a quick summary of the demographics of the 5 young people that were seen within the 90-minute call out, and what this shares with us are all are male, aged between 13 and 17 years of age. 2 out of 5 are not in any employment, education and training, and that goes back to the sequencing of the intervention plan. So we have an education worker within the Youth Justice Service who will then offer that intensive support alongside Operation Deter staff, focusing on promoting desistance. Slough is a very diverse community, as you may know, and the data here evidences this. And all 5, as we see, are open to social care, and we go back to the beginning of this day, where obviously that was shared in regards to the safeguarding concerns, not only the contextual safeguarding concerns.
This is a really important issue for us. And I was just saying to Matthew and Charles White that had Act Now and Operation Deter been in place in 2020, we would not be stood here now. I guarantee you that.
The first thing that hits you is the question, why? Why our son, Olly? What had happened to our boy, our only son? What had he done to get himself into this situation? Why hadn't we as parents managed to protect him and keep him safe? At this point, we wish to praise the Thames Valley Police for their dedication, professionalism, and above all, care and kindness for ourselves, our family, friends, and our community. Olly's case was named Operation Iodine. Its work covered 50 children, 289 witnesses were spoken to in this investigation. 41 devices were seized, 69,500 pages of evidence were worked through, 1,980 voice notes were transcribed. A sequence of events was created that contained 649 events. 200 police officers were involved. Thames Valley Police, working with our legal counsel Alison Morgan, KC, and junior barrister Dennis Barry, were able to tell us why. They told us exactly what had happened, and for that we will be forever thankful, and for the fact that they ensured that we got legal justice for Olly. As grieving parents, it would have been very easy to be angry, to give up, to just live with the despair, but we aren't those people. We had to fight for justice for Olly. The day after Olly was murdered, I remember looking in the mirror as I washed my hands, and I didn't recognise the person I saw. My eyes stared lifelessly back, and I thought, I just want to die. The pain was so intense. I felt I couldn't breathe.
Over the past 2.5 years, we have done the following. Campaigned in Parliament for the online safety bill to be passed. We helped film BBC Panorama Olly's story, A Social Media Murder, as were some of Olly's friends, Izzy, Poppy, Ben, Jacob and Patrick. Joined a group created by Baroness Bevan Kidron called the Bereaved Parents for Online Safety. Campaign for anti-knife crime education nationally through schools, joining forces with the Ben Kinsella Trust. Olly's story has been added into a training course for parents and carers run now nationally by the Ben Kinsella Trust. Supported wherever we can local charities that care about children's mental health and those that with special educational needs and disabilities, the Number 5 group and Parenting Special Children particularly. Supported local youth clubs, Grassroots and Give Back FC. Been part of a project that created an Amnesty art sculpture, the Armoured Heart, which sits on the riverside at the Oracle Shopping Centre in Reading. We hope to be a part of the second phase, which will bring anti-knife crime education to all our local children. We all need to be aware of the lack of protection there is on social media platforms and work together to save our children's childhoods. We as parents failed our son, our most precious boy, by allowing him too much freedom on his phone, a device that we knew very little about and assumed the manufacturers had a duty of care to protect the end user. We couldn't have been further from the truth.
I'm by no means saying that Milton Keynes College is unique in facing challenges around the carrying of weapons. What I will say is that we bring together young people from across the entirety of this city, many different postcodes. When we look at the statistic of 1% of young people potentially carrying a weapon, that would be 30 of our 3,000 young people. And that's just based on statistics that if we aggregate that down, the chances are that we see a higher proportion than that. So again, we looked at the three types of people that carry weapons: the hardened criminals, those who are fueled by fear, and those that are somewhere in the middle. And the reality is that as a college, we are going to see representation from all of those three groups, and how we challenge and tackle that will need to be nuanced to meet those needs. Sometimes we find ourselves in a position that we believe a young person is carrying a weapon, and our only real recourse to action in that event is to suspend them at that point. We don't want to be part of the problem, we want to be part of the solution. The reality is, if we're trying to, as our strapline says, build fairer futures, these young people need to be coming to college, but we need to do that safely, and it's getting that balance. Although zero tolerance is absolutely where we stand, we are not saying that if you've ever been involved in these activities, or if that's running concurrently with your experience at the college, we're not saying you absolutely cannot come. What we're saying is you need to work with us. We need to have robust and rigorous risk assessments. We need to be working with agencies to make sure that we can do that safely. I spoke with a young man I invigilated for a GCSE exam a couple of weeks ago, who was on suspension. He'd been arrested for an offence involving a bladed article. He had already been suspended for potential possession on site. And after his exam, I spent an hour and a half with him talking about the whys and wherefores of what's going on for him as one individual. So we want to look at the cause. Of course we want to look at the cause, but we are cognizant of the fact that actually by the time these young people reach us at 16 and above, a lot of those, it's very deep-seated. If they are involved with any kind of antisocial behaviour group or if they're gang affiliated, their identity is entirely enmeshed with that. And we cannot, realistically, I believe, do a great deal to say to them, actually, we can offer you a viable alternative to this that's actually going to stick and make sense to them. So it's about how we work with them. So we do want to look at the cause. We don't simply want to look at the symptoms, but we have to be realistic about what we can actually achieve. Okay, so we look at a lot of awareness raising. So in terms of being proactive, we use the Ben Kinsella Trust materials. We do. We have a very robust personal development curriculum. So we are talking about all these things. We're empowering our young people to understand what stop and search means to them, the impact, the direct impact on them as individuals. Equally understanding that for some of them, the reality of their life means that knowing all of these things isn't going to translate into them stopping behaving in these ways. So then we start to look at the symptoms. And I will say, in some instances, we have to be reactive. That is just the reality of it. So it isn't as simple as zero tolerance. As I say, we want to give opportunity. We don't want to take that away. Sometimes we have to. Sometimes I have to suspend young people with a very heavy heart, because actually I cannot guarantee that I can keep them safe or I can keep the rest of the college safe. We have used and continue to use knife wands in the event that we suspect a young person is carrying a weapon. And that in itself, it's very intrusive. It's not my favoured method, but there are times that actually that's something we need to do. What we are looking at, and this is where the sticking out like a sore thumb bit comes in, is introducing permanent knife arches. As I say, I've been at the college for 20 years, so for me, I've wrestled with this for quite some time. For some people, it's a really obvious next step. For others, it's a bit too much. And actually what it does is that in itself is very confronting, isn't it? To see an educational establishment with a permanent fixture of a knife arch. So we've talked with various stakeholders, we've talked with students. The overwhelming response, interestingly, from students has been a positive one, but that will actually make them feel safer. That in the first instance it would raise anxiety, we completely appreciate that, and from a parental point of view, if you're looking at two organisations, one with an arch and one without, arguably as a parent you might think, well, that one's got a problem, that's why they've introduced an arch. Or you look at it on the flip side, which is from my perspective, we're taking this seriously and we're doing everything that we can, notwithstanding the fact that we appreciate it's not a panacea, this is not going to solve everything, but it's emblematic of our commitment to this. So we're looking at introducing mobile knife arches in the first instance, purchasing our own. When we've had TVP bring them in, again, fantastic. The students, everyone that walks through it is initially saying, Miss, do you think there's going to be a stabbing? And I'm saying no. What we're doing is we're raising awareness, we're having the conversations, we're opening this up for debate. So we're going to do that in the first instance, involve our students in debates and things to try and find out what they feel is the best next step, with a view to then introducing them permanently from January. That's our commitment at this stage. So how are we going to do this? In part, we're going to do it individually as a standalone organisation. It's about our culture. Here we go, I told you I'll be thrown by my cards. It's about being self-reflective, looking at our own potential prejudice and bias. We have to call that out. In everything we're doing, we have to be doing quality impact assessments, making sure that what we're doing for the right reasons. Belonging, which was referenced earlier, is one of our core values. And we equally respect and value the young people that are involved in knife crime as those who are the victims of knife crime, because we need to be providing opportunity for all of them. We communicate with our students, we're very open with our students, we're very transparent. We get their input in terms of everything we're looking to do and looking to achieve, and equally with parents. Collaboration, absolutely critical. I've had some fantastic meetings in the last week or so with colleagues in Thames Valley Police, with Ewan, who's at the back there. And we're looking at our joined-up approach, working with contextualised safeguarding group, working with mental health services to look at what we can be doing together. In terms of our policies and procedures, our risk assessments, our stop and search policy, our behavioural policies, all of these things, again, we're working with our students, our estates and our facilities, as I say, looking at the introduction of knife arches, increasing our CCTV, potentially introducing knife amnesty bins, all of these things. And then we do it collectively. So for me, again, the reason I'm here primarily is to look at what we can be doing as a collective. So we talked about the schools offices, and again, we've had a commitment from TVP this week and lots of work with the neighbourhood teams and the school offices to look at what we can be doing, how we share information in a way that doesn't breach GDPR but is realistic about what we need to know. So that's work that we're undertaking. And we want to bring the schools along on that journey with us, because again, I think there's power in being a united force with this. I'm really interested in work with Key Stage 2 and 3 children. The college is in a position to host large events, to get armed response in, to get the horses in, to get whoever in, and we could bring in our Year 6 children. Because again, that transition from Year 6 into Year 7 is sometimes where this harm starts to permeate. Sharing of information, as I say, making sure that we are doing that in a way that is respectful to our young people, because we have to be somewhat humble in the face of this, because we are not puppeting people's lives. Nothing that I am given as information do I use prejudicially. We are using this to inform decision making so we can make sure these young people are safe. And then it's sharing our expertise and our resource. We're committed as a college to investing financially in this. Equally, we're looking at new roles that we're introducing positive behaviour leads to try and kind of bridge that gap between PCSOs and then what we're doing as an organisation. So I'd be happy to come out and be working with schools on this issue. I've talked about our commitment to this. The when is now. It's now. It's an iterative process. Again, I think when I've talked to some people about the introduction of the knife arch, there's a concern that I will then just go, oh, I've done my job now, there's a knife arch in place, everyone's safe. That is not the case. I will never rest on my laurels with any of these things because it is so significant. And then I just go back to the why, really. It's because we are in a really privileged position, I feel, and because we absolutely have to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to provide an education and to keep everybody within the college and more broadly safe. Thank you very much.
A message came through on the radio. There was a stabbing. Suspect had a history of violence, so switched on my lights and sirens, started heading to the scene. 60 miles an hour, 70, 80, 90. I was going over 100 miles an hour when another update came through. So a request that all taser trained officers got there as a matter of urgency. So I exchanged a knowing glance to my colleague, looked down at the taser, position is right here.
We weaved our way through the traffic. Cars moving to the side of the road as we parted the sea of metal and rubber. 10 minutes felt like forever as we kept getting updates. Armed officers overtook us, so did dog units and other taser officers. This was going to be a long night. When we got to the scene, they'd already begun taping off a cordoned area. This was bad. There were 2 ambulances there already. The guy had ran, they didn't know where he was. I felt helpless. The paramedics were working on a young boy. He couldn't have been older than 16. We kept everyone back. They didn't need to see it.
The mother stood over her son fighting for his life. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes passed before I heard her cries in the back of an ambulance. He didn't make it. And our suspect, he all but vanished. Over 2 hours passed. It was getting dark. Members of the public brought water out for us, asked us what had happened. What could we say? 3 hours passed, messages coming through every few minutes. Dogs had got a scent, and they eventually found him hiding in a ditch next to a farmer's field.
For days I tried to get the image out of my head.
Sound like cries.
The smell of iron hung in the air.
Why did I feel hungry? Everyone asked me how I was.
What could I say? I felt like I couldn't say a thing.
So I knew the family of that boy had been through so much more.
It's all my fault. I could have just been better, listened, paid more attention. This could have all been prevented. I'm so sorry. He had goals and passions, but nothing could be done.
I don't know where you are. I mean, I can see you, I can touch you, but you can't stop, right? You've lost your scent. You're not here. Not really.
You were never a stranger. Just someone who carried an entire war inside of them and just needed to be listened to. I cry every night trying to find a piece of me that I lost in you. The pain, the humiliation, the restless nights, it's endless. But I know that piece of me is gone forever. Maybe our forever was meant for memories and not people. I love you so much. It was never something I said a lot when you grew up. My love for you may have been silent, but millions and thousands of emotions lived in that silence.
We had such high expectations of life and what we were going to do. You were going to take me to my first music festival. Be the first person who would give a lift to the shops when I passed my driving test. You loved Radiohead. I prefer Cats and Dogs. You disagreed. You wanted to be a fireman. You would have been a good fireman. Maybe not. You were incredibly stupid.
I know I never earned the place of being a mother to you, and that thought alone kills me. But that's all I wanted to be to you. A good mother. But silence became our way of living, which was just inscrutable. I miss you so much.
You were here, alive, breathing, with goals and passions, but those 17 beautiful years and more was ripped from you, and it's all my fault. I still buy the apple juice you like.
hoping this is all a terrible dream.
And I'll come home and you'll be sat on the sofa watching Big Bang Theory.
I know that was your favourite show, and I have that playing on the TV constantly.
Just hoping
You'd be back.
Where are you? I've always been told that life is short. Live, love, laugh. Such a cliche that you find in people's bathrooms stuck to walls. Took the piss out of someone who had a tattoo to them once. Loser. But that's all I want to say to you now. Love, laugh, live. Why did you go out that night? Why couldn't you just stay put? Why the hell could you not just stay out of trouble for once in your goddamn life? There's a scar where your heart is. There's a scar where my heart is. It could have been for years. You could have seen so much more. You could have touched so much more. You stupid, reckless idiot. I'm so angry at you now. Disappointed even. You couldn't use your fists. Why did you have to fight? It wasn't even your fight. Why did you have to be there? You could have been with me. But you're not. Not anymore. I don't know where you are.
Maria? Maria? Honey? Are you okay?
Oh, yeah, I guess. I'm tea for help.
Oh, well, I'm going to the kitchen now to get some tea. Do you want me to get you some more?
Yeah, sure.
You were thinking about me again, weren't you?
Yeah, how can I not, David?
I mean, it's been 6
I
months.
know how long it's been, okay?
Okay, look, Maria, we're going to have to learn to move on.
I'm sorry if I'm finding it hard to move on from our 17-year-old
Okay,
son's
Maria, I
death.
didn't mean it like
I'm
that.
sorry that I don't have it in me to move on, but you clearly do.
Really? Of course I haven't moved on from you. Okay, I don't even think you can move on from something like that.
Come on, David, what do you expect me to think?
I expect you to think I'm on your side with this.
Are you?
Yes!
Every time I mention him, you shut me down.
Okay,
Every time
you
I
don't
want us to talk
understand
about that night,
what-
you shut me down.
No, but every time I think about that night, it eats me up to a point where I can't even sleep at night. Okay, it makes me feel like I have failed as a parent.
Me too.
Exactly, so I get where you're coming from. But Maria, the world does not stop.
David, my world stopped when his heart
I get that, okay, but we can't keep living in the past, okay? We just need to move
Ross,
on.
you would say something like that.
What do you want from me?
Mourn, David! I want you to mourn!
So SOPHIA itself stands for South Oxfordshire Food and Education Alliance. It's a hell of a mouthful. I think we're probably going to change it at some point. But the idea is that we enable transformation of people's lives. And we do that through the restorative actions of work, education, and social justice. We're not limited to the cause and the effect that we have with these young people, and that it is predominantly young people. We also tackle food insecurity as well. So we're part of the Fair Share network. So Fair Share, as some of you, I'm sure you know, when you go out of Tesco's, you have like a little basket with some of you may put some of that food in. And that food then goes to our warehouse, which literally is about 500 yards, 600 yards that way. Now, all that work is done by the young people. So, for example, down in Didcot, our second, or our initial site, which started 10 years ago, the warehouse manager there was 18, and she ran the whole operation. So, that's obviously, she's had a lot of a transformation. So how do we do that? Our USP, I believe, is that we listen. And you might think, well, that's not really a USP, but actually, a lot of the time, we give people a good talking to, when there's actually, I think we need to give them a good listening to. Giving space, non-judgmental, trusted space, confidential in a lot of cases, and some of the work that I do, is key. So we have been doing work in schools. We've worked with 100 young people across 6 schools in Milton Keynes, supporting them with coach mentoring. They were selected by the school because they are at risk of exclusion. Now, we all know, you may know, especially probably from some of the talks that you've had this morning, things like ACEs, all our young people, everybody that we have some sort of interaction with, we're aware of their backgrounds. and we need to cater individually for those young people. I'm interested in not what they've done, but why they're doing it. And I'm going to listen to them and continue trying to listen until we get to the bottom of that so I can help them in the best way that I can. And my job then is to share it with you guys. The schools, the police officers, the local authorities, government. Because that's only where change happens. So what do you do now at Sophia?
I'm now an education mentor at Sophia.
And what's your new job that you're going to working with me?
Transitional support worker.
Yeah. And where did you start? When did you start with Sophia?
I started Sophia when I was 16. I went there, I joined the education programme, and I've been there for about 3 years. And then, from the second I got there, I just kept saying I wanted to be like Paul and Soraya and everybody there. So they kind of helped me. They got me out of the situation that I was in, got me a job, got me into training, and I've been there ever since. Now I'm doing what I love.
What one thing would you say, like one word, what is Sophia?
It's hope.
Cool.
Sophia's hope.
I think I'll just leave on a really clear note, really, is if you want to have a positive outcome, you guys have to take the responsibility to go and get it. Whatever it is. Don't be limited by what you think you are limited by. Challenge it. Challenge those young people and challenge yourselves. It's really important.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob. I'm CEO of an organisation which was, until recently, called Ek Saath. Ek Saath means together as one in Hindi, Punjabi and Urdu. So this slide summarises some of the work we do, which I view as knife crime prevention. It's not exhaustive. There's some things on there which aren't on there. They're a big part of what we do, but this is kind of illustrative. One of the things that I thought I might mention, because it's come up a lot today, has been the importance of transition. We know in Slough that it's a big issue, and we know that frequently we've got a situation where we've got some amazing pastoral workers in primary schools that just go above and beyond to really nurture the child and hold them through this school. They work with the family, great relationship with home, and they get them to the end of year 6, and they're like, we've made it, we've done it, we've managed to stop them getting excluded. And then come October, those same kids are circling around the outside of the school on BMXs, basically just wishing they could get back in. So we've been talking to the schools, what do we do about this? So what we've started to do is work with really good young role models with young people in year 5, and then keep going with them to year 8. So their lives might go through that huge difference in year 6, but we're holding them across the transition. And I see that as knife crime prevention. So we need to really do preventive work and do it well. And how do we do that? Well, what's really important to me is that we tell them what we know. I think what's really important is, as professionals, we learn all of this research. We find out all of this information, but then we don't actually share it with young people. Maybe we think they won't understand, or maybe we're scared of what they'll say when they hear it. But I think we owe it to them that if we're going to invest all this money in finding out the answers, that we actually take the time to share it with them. I think that's so important. One of the things that I've been using is that a lot of the young people who get into some of the most trouble that we work with never really understand or never really latch on to the fact that they were chosen by somebody for that life. That they were groomed and they were brought into it because maybe it's because they were bigger than their peers. Maybe it's because they seemed more vulnerable than the other people around them. It doesn't matter what it is, but they're chosen, and a lot of the young people don't necessarily get that. Now, this is something that Bernardo's came up with for talking to young people about child sexual exploitation. But I couldn't find anything that was similar for criminal exploitation. So we developed this, where we talk about young people being chosen out, that grooming process, building on those vulnerabilities, and how they can be moved along until knife crime becomes a part of their life, criminality, things like that.
We do have an education centre in Milton Keynes, which lots of people locally know, called Hazard Alley, where we do some work around knife crime, but the majority of our work is out in schools. In the last 18 months, we have been visiting primary schools, so year 5 and year 6 So the last 2 years in primary schools and year 7, so the first year in secondary schools. And we've been in schools in Milton Keynes, in Slough, and across the rest of Buckinghamshire as well. We go in to schools and we work with a class at a time, and we create a safe space for our young people to have this vital conversation. I think a common thread throughout today has been the need to make sure that actually we're engaging young people in finding solutions and identifying that there are issues. So my education team, all of whom are trained and qualified teachers, go out into schools. We work with young people. We create a safe space for a vital conversation. We help dispel some myths that I will share with you in a few moments. And we really are trying to create a culture of empowerment for these young people. Some of the things that always surprise me is some of the myths that young people have. And we've come across a few in these last 18 months working with young people that I want to share with you today. There's a whole variety, so I picked the top ones that I thought I wanted to share. One thing is that we often get feedback that they think lots of young people carry knives, so they should also be carrying knives. And Matthew, I thought your point at the beginning of the day was really interesting, that actually if we're talking about 99% don't, well, there's this real misconception amongst young people that everybody's carrying weapons, or everybody has a need to carry a weapon, and that's not reality at all. So we challenge that myth with them. Another myth they have is actually, well, if I carry a weapon, I'm only carrying it for protection, I'm going to keep myself safe. Well, actually, we know that the reality of the risk significantly increases if you happen to be carrying a weapon, so we really get them to understand that. Another myth is that, oh, well, if I happen to be stood around somebody that's got a weapon or might be using a weapon, not my problem because I didn't do anything. And actually know the reality of actually if you're aware and the responsibility you have to actually make a choice and make a decision and to intervene, I think that is quite a powerful thing that we engage them with. Another myth, which alarms me quite significantly, I've shared this before, is that some young people think there's a safe place to stab somebody on their body. So in a very naive way, well, if I'm not aiming for their heart, but if I stab them in the arm or the thigh, it's not going to be fatal, it's not going to be detrimental, it's not going to have a massive impact on somebody's life, and that's not the reality. We have influenced one young person in that group of 30 to go in, really think about their choices, to really think about actually who are they getting involved in, what groups are they involved in, how can they keep themselves safe, who can they lean on for support. We always want young people to understand that actually we don't want them to feel totally isolated, that there isn't a support network for them, and it's about getting them to understand there always is a support network for them. And we've heard a wonderful example of that today. It feels weird being back in this space because the last time I was stood here talking was the launch of the Knife Angel arrived in Milton Keynes, and we were proud to have been an education partner in Milton Keynes alongside MK Donset here, and then we also went and did the education piece in Slough.
I run an organisation called Lime. We're a behaviour change lab based at Warwick Innovation District, which is part of the University of Warwick. I lead a multidisciplinary team. It brings together researchers, engagement specialists, educationalists, designers and technology developers, and a lot of the work that we do is kind of grounded in technology. We design behavioural interventions using digital technologies and media that young people love to use, and we do all of this for a single purpose, which is that purpose that's on screen now. When I set up Lime in 2010, we were very much focused on tackling symptoms of societal issues. We designed educational resources on subjects such as gangs, gun crime, knife crime, radicalisation, CSE, you name it, we were making resources about it. And as Amanda said earlier today, sometimes you have to start with symptoms as a route into this. However, what we learned very quickly was if you start at the point of responding to a symptom and then attempt to universally change behaviour, this is a flawed model, and it's flawed because it disregards the context in which young people operate, and it often relies on logic to change their minds or to change their behaviour. And as I'm sure lots of people that work in schools know, logic isn't always the best place to start when you're dealing with responses to emotions and psychological needs. So realising this, by 2016 we'd switched our approach
And we started to conduct research into the behavioural drivers of adolescent decision making in the context of growing up today. More families experience breakdown or malfunction today, and this results in a loss of the traditional family time that's so vital for young people's health and well-being. Things like we no longer share meals together in the same way as we used to. I mean, it sounds really, really inconsequential, but the family table historically is a place to communicate, to share and learn values, and it shapes young minds. The second point of our research was that young people spend significant amounts of time online. Again, this is nothing that will come of any great surprise, but often within those virtual communities, views are less likely to be challenged, they become polarised, it becomes really easy to get caught up in something that escalates. We describe this as a pipe. It's a pipe that is channeled directly to our young people. And this pipe has its own language, its own value system, it has its own modes of communication, and generally it excludes us as parents, as educators, as protectors. And the third point that came out of our research was when we spoke with practitioners, these were teachers, youth workers and youth justice professionals, they told us how this had altered the experience of growing up to such an extent that they often lacked that practical experience to lean on, to be able to do what they wanted to do most of all, and that was help people. So, what did all this research mean? Well, the result was that it increased emotional trauma, anxiety and depression, behavioural problems in our schools and in our communities. And this is backed up by data from the ONS and from organisations like the World Health Organization. The evidence shows that people with early behavioural challenges, young people with these challenges, go on to struggle throughout their lives. And again, we've heard that today. They're the kids who become excluded, exploited and criminalised. And more of them than ever are teetering on the edge of tipping over into this world, according to the research. As they spend time in this pipe with their emotional needs on display, they become easy picking for predators. They're influenced into gangs, to believe that carrying a knife is an answer, or groomed for exploitation. And agencies like the police deal with these symptoms as they surface to protect the public, and the organisations that we've heard from today do their utmost to pick up the pieces. And as Amanda says, that's sometimes all you can do. But young people are being routinely identified, targeted and accessed like never before. This is another theme that came up. The first thing we have to do is create dialogue. For us, that's about understanding the root causes, and that's enabled us to develop more effective interventions to build resilience, emotional regulation, empathy and self-awareness. But it's difficult to translate this into long-term behaviour change, and that requires a process that co-ops young people. It's about talking, and as Paul said, it's about listening. We found that there are three really critical parts to this. The first is engagement. Maya talked about engagement and how important it is, and how engaging was it to see Milton Keynes College perform. I think we all went on that emotional journey, and it touched all of us. That's one example of engagement that I think you can use as a catalyst to then build really positive change. We achieve that using immersive digital technologies, and storytelling is our route into that, just like with Milton Keynes College. And the final point I want to make is about the importance of generating rich, actionable insight from the intervention work that any of us we do. We heard from Russ earlier, and he talked about all of the data projects that are going on, and these are really important in terms of understanding individuals, and as Paul said, meeting those individuals where they're at.